This week, I'm pleased and excited on the SDM interview show to talk to my good friend, Mr. Jeff Brown. Jeff is the CEO of Alpha Social Media, Inc., an organization that provides workplace education training for Nova Scotia businesses. Jeff has done workplace education, social media training, WordPress training, and more. Jeff and I collaborate on many other projects, and we thought today we would sit down and talk about social media, where it went in 2018 and where we think it will go in 2019. So please join Jeff Brown and myself as we talk about social media in 2018 and where it's going in 2019. So we're here with Jeff Brown, and Jeff is a social media trainer, and we're going to talk a little bit about social media, what happened in 2018, what's going on in 2019, and we're just going to kind of do an informal chat just to say what's going on. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
Doing good today, and you?
We're having a good day, just preparing for 2019 and what is ahead.
So, you know, social media in 2018, we had a couple funny things happen. We had, on Facebook, we had all the election scandal with the Russians. We had all the changing rules on Facebook, which seem to be changing by the day lately, not just with how groups work, how pages work, how ads work. Twitter, we've seen issues on Twitter, and then we've seen some changes. You and I were talking offline about things like Tumblr and changes they're making and a whole pile of other stuff. So what do you see was the biggest thing that happened in social media in 2018?
The 2018, I think the biggest thing that was that happened, I would say, was with Facebook and all the breaches, because it really showed people that their information was more vulnerable than they thought. Now, there's still a lot of good things ahead, but when you think about people starting to tune out, people starting to move away from their feeds as far as the day-to-day paying attention to it, that became a significant hurdle, and Facebook's really has to work hard at trying to win these people back, because if they're not there, then as businesses, it's going to be pretty hard to market to people that aren't going to be looking at their Facebook accounts, for instance.
It's really interesting because I hear, you know, and we're both in that space, and one of the things I read is Facebook's audience is declining amongst millennials, but Instagram's audience is increasing, or WhatsApp's audience is increasing. And guess who owns WhatsApp and Instagram?
Yes, exactly.
So does it really matter at the end of the day?
Well, that'll be decided by the people literally that are on Facebook, but it's something that businesses are going to have to really pay attention to, because reading some articles here talking about, you know, where really is your audience? Because if your audience, the people that you do business with, aren't in a certain social network, it doesn't make sense for you to be there. And so
I agree.
And so when you think about what happened with Facebook, it just shows that all these networks are vulnerable. And I'm watching more and more a movement for some people to do more on Twitter, for instance. I just saw a CBC story on trends on Twitter for 2018. What was the biggest ones? And I didn't see anything like that on Facebook at all.
Yeah.
And we always have to be aware. I remember when I was younger, in my wilder days, they used to have bars where 1 month there would be a massive crowd there. The next month it would be a ghost town. People are fickle, and they'll move to where they think the crowd is. And that's one thing that social networks have to be aware of, is that literally they may be doing great now, but they could become a ghost town if they don't really live up to the expectations of the people there that are on those social networks. And that becomes a challenge to work with as a business, as a digital marketer, as a person helping business. We always have to be aware that there'll be some great, interesting things coming, But this is always in the background. If the people don't have the confidence, all our best strategy and tactics won't matter a hill of beans.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, people are fickle, businesses are fickle. Like, for example, as a business, especially a small business, I think what business owners need to work out is what your demographics are. So I always use the example of Pinterest when I'm talking demographics. And you've heard me use this example before. And I say, okay, if you're a young woman with disposable income between 20 and 40, where are you going to be? Probably Pinterest. And I'll tell you why. What people look for is jewelry, cooking, lingerie, shoes, things like that. And believe it or not, that's all the stuff that flourishes on Pinterest. So it's all about knowing your market. And people say, well, you know, is it really worth it? Well, what I'll tell you is if you're marketing on Pinterest, your CPC, or cost per click as it's called, is actually less than on Facebook or on Google Ads. So knowing your demographics is really important, because as a small business owner, you don't have time to be everywhere, and you don't have the money to hire somebody to be everywhere.
Absolutely. You and I have had some really great conversations on strategy around this, but also on the idea of doing some research ahead of time.
Yeah.
You want to speak onto that, Rob, a bit?
Yeah, I think in terms of doing research, I think what you have to do is kind of look at where your market is. So first of all, work out your target market and say, okay, where are these people hanging out? And I'll give you an example of that. I'm not big. I have an Instagram account, and I've thrown a couple of videos lately up on Instagram, but I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. And the reason is, from a business perspective, it doesn't work well for me. So I just don't do it. So do your research, know your target market, and then turn around and figure out what your advertising costs are if you're going to go into cost per click, or figure out what your people costs are. Because even if you're doing free social media, you have to pay somebody or have somebody do that. What's their hourly rate? What does it cost them to do the job? Because that matters. And that factors into what I call social media budget for small business.
Yeah.
So you need to figure that out. Then you got to figure out, where do I want to spend my time? So I'll go back to my buddy who's got a jewelry store, and I use that as an argument. He spends very little time on Twitter, very little time. Where he spends most of his time is on Instagram stories and Facebook business page, and he's starting to spend some time on Pinterest for that exact reason. So he's figured out what works for him. And then after you start running these campaigns, don't look at the number of followers. Don't look at the number. Don't even look at the engagement numbers. Look at how many of those people convert to leads, and is it worth it? Because that is more important. You can have all the engagement in the world as a jewelry store, as a DIY shop, but if it doesn't convert to sales or business, what's the point?
Yeah, and strategy is going to become very important in 2019, for the simple fact that literally you need to know where people are looking. You need to put something shiny in front of them, and then you need to build a flow for them to follow through and measure all along the way, so that you know when they ring the bell at the end, so to speak.
Yeah,
and so very smart, and building your strategy will be important.
There's no question. And I think that strategy will encompass more and more video, even on Facebook or Twitter, more and more pictures. So posts with pictures and video get more and more results. We've proven that. We know on Facebook Lives actually increase all your stuff showing up higher in the timeline. And I'm a good example of that. I've proven that in the last 3 months. I mean, I've been on a video tear, as you know, so for that exact reason, and I admit that. So I think that has more of an encompass. And part of the problem is the millennials and the younger generation doesn't want to spend time reading 2,000 and 3,000 word blog posts. They'd rather look at a 2-minute video or a 3-minute video.
Yeah, I think that's becoming more and more a trend as people read less, and unfortunately that's just the reality of it. And they want to, because they feel pressured that their time is valued and they feel rushed and they need to, in their mind, get what they need to get as quick as possible so that they can move on to something else. And that is typically what we are dealing with as marketers.
No question. So going along that, I actually think the biggest story of this year was one that I expected, but not so soon, and that's the demise of Google Plus. We all know several months ago Google Plus got hacked, and they've basically announced by July of 2019, June or July, that it will be no longer exist. This is their second opportunity into the social media space. Google Buzz was the first one.
Yes.
Anything they've created in-house hasn't done well. Anything they've purchased has done very well. For example, YouTube.
Yes,
YouTube
exactly.
was purchased and developed out of house, and YouTube's gotten better with some creation tools and things like that, and Google and YouTube Live. But frankly, I think Google just needs to give up on the Facebook killer. I don't think it's their space. I don't think they need to be in that space. And the other big site that demised in 2018 was StumbleUpon, is no longer either. And I think kind of what killed StumbleUpon, again, where people moved to, was a site called Reddit. Same type of site. And I think StumbleUpon was just so yesterday's news, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And as we've seen over the years, things change, and business needs to embrace those changes and move with things that are actually working.
Yeah.
And things that aren't working are simply going to die out and fade away.
And sometimes it's just somebody else taking it over. And a good example of that happening recently is Flickr, the almighty photo site that was a Yahoo property. So Yahoo was sold to Comcast in the States. And Flickr has now since been offloaded and sold to a company called SmugMug. And for those who don't know, SmugMug is a high-end photography site, so that's a good marriage, except they've now gone to a freemium model. So to be viable, they've decided they need to start charging for their services. So it's interesting to see where sites go and why things change.
Yeah. Well, speaking of change, one of the things that I see, and you and I have talked about it a bit, is voice search. Yep. And voice search is going to be a game changer in that with all these Amazon Echoes, these devices that you simply talk into and it gives you information, yep, that is going to be a game changer in the digital marketing realm, period. And where I see that going, and maybe we'll talk to this a bit, is that your website is going to be more important now than your social media, as it becomes the source that will bring back the information to these voice searches. Yep. Now, it's not going to kill social media, but it's going to, because your website in a lot of ways does better than most of anything on the internet, period. We may even see websites that incorporate a social aspect to it coming very shortly, where they'll move their people away from what we consider the traditional social networks, and they'll build a social network-like environment based on their websites, for instance.
No, I don't disagree, and I can even see social networks being built around voice search. I mean, I can see that coming personally, because people are on the go and it's easier to pick up the phone and talk into the phone. One of the reasons why I think audio's become so big too in the last couple years. I mean, everything from podcasts to you name it. And I think the whole thing about social media is creating that community around it. So, I think, we've talked about one of the sites that I spend time on is LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is kind of lost with its communities right now. There's some really good connections on that, but LinkedIn, the standard seems to be, oh, I'll connect with you. And by the way, the first message is, here's a list of my services, contact me.
Yeah.
And I usually push an unconnect button and say goodbye.
Yeah, that turns people off really fast, because do they really care about you? Do they really care about your business? And what's their business building model? Is it simply get as many no's as possible to get to that yes? Or are they really building quality relationships that literally can lead to something or to a new network through there? Are they really building relationships? And I think subsequent to voice search, you're right, building the community is going to be one of the most important things. And that's where a local business, a smaller to medium business, can get a really one up on the bigger businesses, because they're going to have an easier time to build community around them than a corporation like Coca-Cola, for instance, or Pepsi.
No question. And even more so is if you look at, I like to use the example, you and I both know a great lady by the name of Kim Doyle on
Yes.
Facebook. And Kim has built this amazing content creators community. And it's the only community I know where there's no egos, no garbage, no crap. And I use Kim's community as an example for a lot of people and say, every other community, there seems to be egos. And for some reason, that one, there's none. And that's why the community keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. And that's absolutely critical for success, because we're getting back to the time where we used to have corner stores in each corner of the block, and the corner store owner really focused on building relationships to help him grow his business, which meant that they had to know who the mom and dad were. They had to know the kids, what they did, sports they played. And I'm not saying that all small, medium businesses need to dab in that deep, but it is absolutely critical now that they understand who they are marketing to, and that it's going to require more than just a want to buy a house kind of deal. They need to have some good social credibility in their community and be a trusted business in that community.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I agree with you. And it's funny, you know, I was reading another article and somebody said, is Twitter even relevant anymore? And I kept saying, all you have to do is look at the U.S. president. He seems to make Twitter relevant whether we want to hear him or not, or what he does or not. And, you know, and there was a guy in Toronto who I know really well, not really well, but I know through political circles, a guy named Rocco Rossi, who's head of the Chamber of Commerce in Ontario. And Rocco actually posted a tweet a couple of days on New Year's Eve that was meant to be satirical and funny, and the Twitterverse took offense to it to the point he had to issue an apology and remove the tweet. So anybody that says Twitter's not relevant anymore going in 2019, I think is missing the boat in a big way, actually.
It could be one network that I think could really benefit if for instance, like companies like Facebook don't take the community around them seriously as far as protecting them. And really, there comes a point where they continue to whittle at the visibility of posts on a regular basis. People are just going to say, we've had enough.
Yep.
And that's where, if they're not careful, they have to literally make sure that they do what's necessary to keep them happy, because I think Twitter is probably one network that people still have a hard time understanding. And it's more, I go the analogy, Facebook is the billboard that everybody stands around and talks about, but Twitter is the telephone line. And it's who you call, who you interact with on Twitter that absolutely determines whether you can succeed on that network or not. And
it's
think about it, the ability to directly communicate with some of the, say if you really like authors are limited, for instance, in what they can write, simply because publications have limits. But imagine talking to an author in the stuff that he didn't write. Imagine talking to people and having conversations with those people where you get the rest of the details.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of how Twitter can really impact. It may not be a great global blasting tool in a lot of cases for the average person. Now, Donald Trump, he can put something on there and it goes everywhere. But you and I, we've got to work hard at building a small, loyal community around there that people that will support us, people will refer our business, people that will, share our stuff. This is where I see social media going, is making better connections this year, deeper and more meaningful connections. Because the days of putting something on a social network and hoping that it's going to go boom, those days I think are pretty much gone.
Yep. So I agree with you in terms of that, and I also think, Twitter is still the place to go for disasters. It's still the place to go for current news. It's still the place to go when you need something in a hurry. It's still, and you and I talked about the Search Engine Journal released a article recently that said Twitter was one of the top alternative search engines. So it still matters for search. And
Yep.
frankly, without Twitter, we wouldn't have hashtags on Facebook and Instagram.
Absolutely. And it's a great place for you to, if you want to improve your social media, it's a great place to practice and post a lot, learn from your posting, learning how to write headlines that actually create interest, because you're not going to get penalized for over posting on Twitter.
No, you're not. So where else do you see 2019 going in social media?
I see I see social media as far as really being focused. I see keywords becoming more and more important. And what I mean by that is if people are searching, then you have to be prepared to show up in the right searches with the right content in a way that you can maximize once you get there. And I see conversations and I've always been an advocate, post better and drop the frequency, but post better and create more meaningful posts that people literally will stop, and it will solve a problem or provide a moment of levity, for instance, in someone's day. And so, excuse me, being more decisive, more impactful with the posts that you post out there, and put better content on there.
I would agree, and I would think one of the things I see happening is, I think, interesting enough, I think Snapchat has got, for example, it's got some challenges. I think you're going to see a decline there. I really do. I think Instagram is just growing by days and droves. And one of the things that's driving Instagram is Instagram stories and Instagram TV right now, if you look at that landscape. YouTube's getting a little better with the YouTube live video integration, so that's driving that. And video is kind of where it's at, so YouTube is growing by the day. Facebook, I think, has some challenges between the political messes, the ad messes, and everything else. Depending on who you talk to, there's a community or two ticked off at the organizers of Facebook almost on a daily basis, but nobody's going anywhere yet because there's still 1 billion users on Facebook, so you got to remember that. Yeah. People like to grumble, but they don't like to act. And that's kind of, I don't see a big network killer coming out next year. I don't see it happening.
No.
What I see happening is some more niche networks.
Yeah. Yep. And people collectively agreeing to be part of one network as opposed to spread out.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think what people need to be really careful of, especially for a content creator, is not to put the same content out on every network. Customize it for the network it's going on. So for example, I do Facebook Lives almost on a daily basis during the week after a minute, 2 minutes. Generally, as a rule, I don't post those on my blog, even though I can embed. I did with some of the Gutenberg stuff, but as a rule, I tend not to. And the reason is I don't want the same content all over the place, because if the same content's everywhere, why does the person that follows me on Facebook need to follow me on Twitter, need to read?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is that they take one post and put it everywhere, and there's no reason for the visitor to go to all those different sites. That's where you have to learn to customize something for one network and then customize something else for another network. Now, it takes a lot more time to make these things for these networks. But if you post less, but you post better content, and you get that in front of people, you should do better.
Yeah, no question. Or repurpose your content. For example, if you posted the video on Facebook, maybe take the audio from that video and create an audio recording and repurpose it that way. And then you give people the option. Maybe they want to listen to that video if it's suited for a video as an audio on a smartphone while they're running around jogging, and then you give those options, right? And that's really important too.
Now, and I suspect, just like you and I are doing, creating strategic partnerships to create content that's going to be relevant for listeners.
No question. Together. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've got more requests in for me to do podcast interviews in the next 6 months than I've had in a long time. More and more people are jumping into different realms. And part of it is people are tired of just reading text. They actually want to read, they want to listen to stuff or they want to watch stuff. And I think that whole model is changing. And that's an issue too, right? So,
well, let me just throw in something funny here. I was direct messaging on Twitter a friend of mine, and I was asking him, my question was, how do you perceive the health of the industry as a whole, the digital marketing? His comment was filled with people half-assing and pretending it's going to need some changes. And so we still see that that there is a different level of marketing business in different locations, and knowing what you need and what you can expect, especially in the new year when the game is going to be anteed up to a higher level, where in order to get in front of people, you're going to have really smart people working with you to advise you and help you with your social media strategy, your digital marketing strategy, if you want to call it that way, because it's not hard as a business to spend money, but it's hard to spend money wisely.
I agree.
And that's why finding people that really know their stuff and that can give you wisdom and help you with develop a really good strategy for your business is going to be key for 2019.
No, I 100% agree with you, Jeff. I think things aren't going to change as much as people think, but where I think it's changing is we're getting back into this whole digital marketing thing where, and this is where digital marketing and social media kind of cross paths. As far as I'm concerned, is people are doing more on relationships instead of the old way. So like what I was talking about earlier with LinkedIn, the shove method doesn't work anymore.
No.
People like the human touch. People like things like, for example, I reached out, even though I was away yesterday, and you noticed, I sent out a whole pile of New Year's greetings. Now, let's be fair, with the exception of a few, including yours, most of those were written a week ahead ago. But the point was, I did do that. A lot of marketers don't do that. A lot of marketers don't reach out to past clients and wish them a happy birthday. I do stuff like that. So I think the human touch, even in social media, is more and more important by the day.
Absolutely, because it's still your business 101. The basic principles that do work should be used over and again. And that's where your best new customer is a customer that has done business with you already. You're going to spend less money to get them back in the system again. Yep. And so a simple, even an old style, send a card to someone or an email or just wishing them a happy birthday and have a super day. Things like that, you think take very little to actually do, really matter nowadays because people want to know that you care and you're thinking about them and you're investing in them.
Or something I do with you often where, as you know, I'm a bit of an educational junkie. I'll take stuff I've saved up and throw it on USB key and I'll drop it in the mail. Or, and going back to it's true though. I mean,
I know, and I have the USBs here.
yeah, I know. But as the cards, like, and I'm going to throw a shout out because I read a really cool book called The Power of Human Connection and by Cody Bateman. Cody's actually the founder of a company called Send Out Cards. And it makes sending out cards so easy. You can take a subscription and send out cards, and you can take a picture on the smartphone and just send out a card. And it's really cool way of keeping in touch. And so I was looking at that. And you can check out, shameless plug, the interview I did with Matt Treb on the book. So, I think human interaction is important. I mean, you and I are a good example. We met on social media and we talk probably 4 or 5 times a week, bouncing ideas off each other.
Absolutely. And it's just literally, I just know when you're going to call.
Yeah,
and it's not always about the business.
Oh no, sometimes it's about how's your family, how's this, how's that, a happy new year, what's going on, and half the time we don't even talk about the business, and that's the interesting thing. So I think people need to take social media and put the human touch back in. Let's get away from all the automated garbage and the noise, and take some time. I saw a couple people come up in my feed today I hadn't talked to in a while, and I kind of wished them a happy new year and took the time to message them and said, I'm thinking about you, kind of thing. So that's really important too. So,
and you can never underestimate how important that one touch could be to someone. You know what I mean? It could literally be the thing that encourages them, that moves them on, that really is a little bright spot in their day.
Yep.
And as businesses, we are should not solely be focused on making money.
Yeah, so
we
true.
should be creating some social good. We should be giving back to the community. That's one of the pillars of my business. Is not all about me.
No, it can't always be about you. And I think, sometimes you have to give back. You and I both, you've been involved with Crime Stoppers countless times and on social media doing some cool stuff. And, I've been involved in a couple of community websites. And the problem you got to be so careful of, though, is when you give back so much, sometimes people expect you to keep giving and they forget you've actually got a business to run. And that's another issue all day.
It is. But it's nice to be able to give when you want to.
No question. Do you have one good tip for people in 2019 what to do with their social media?
The one tip that I always say is that pick one individual, one person that they'll help you grow your business, and get to know them offline.
Yep.
And so find that person that where you can create a win-win. It's good for you, it's good for them, because there are business owners out there looking to mentor people in business.
Yep.
And it's about finding those people. It's about creating something that literally will help you to grow your business.
Yep.
And so it starts with you finding that individual and then building with that individual, and then taking the scary path as they tell you to do stuff that scares the living daylights out of you, that will grow your business. So it's as good as it is to be online, your online should always be a lead to something offline where literally you're building something of value. And you and I are a classic example where we literally met on Twitter, we went to Skype, then I met you in Toronto face-to-face, and now my phone has not stopped ringing, but we've grown together. And that's
mine either, but we grow together and you build it together, and you gotta, the hardest part about working from home is surrounding yourself by people and getting that social interaction. And sometimes.
Yeah. And you and I deal with a lot of business owners, and the thing I would say to them is simply that: find someone that can help you and encourage you this year on social media that you can potentially connect with. I hate to use the word in real life because social media still is in real life.
I hate that term. Offline is a better term.
Yeah, exactly. Offline, and build something of value this year that stretches you in your business and stretches the person you're connecting with.
Yeah. And
How
then
about you?
I'll take that one further. I mean, even kind of if you're into social media, go to a site like meetup.com and find some networking groups in your area and use, and Meetup's really a social media community, and move it offline. Going into this year, I think what people need to realize is kind of to put the human element back into people and show a little empathy. And my whole theory with social media is if you want to make your business known, help some people out. So if you see somebody who's got a problem on Twitter or Facebook, send them a message and say, I'd like to help you. And then say, you know, how I'd like to help you, and don't have a hidden agenda, like help them. Not I want to help you, and by the way, I want to charge you $20 to help you. No. To help them solve their problem. Because you know what? If you help enough people, you're going to get what you want sooner or later.
Absolutely.
It's just a question of when. So I'm a big believer of that. Put the human element, help some people out. Don't be afraid to answer some questions. I mean, you know, somebody said to me recently, you give away tips every day, minute tips. And do they work? And I said, yeah, they do work because I help people. And those minute tips cause, well, they cause visibility, but they also create a relationship. And people, you know, I had a comment on a Facebook video I did 2 years ago. I had a comment on a Facebook video on how to install the classic editor in Aveda, and YouTube's a social media community. And I had 4 people come to me this week and say, that really helped me out of a jam. Thank you. And then they kind of, you know, and then they start watching and the community grows. So help people grow your community and you'll be much better off for it.
Yeah, because when you think about it, you're helping small business, and they really are the backbone of a lot of the economy. I mean, big business comes in and they can come out just as easy, but it's the small businesses that really stay, thrive, and really bear the weight of a lot of this, of the taxes, for instance.
Yep.
And so helping them really helps the economy and helps the area.
Jeff, thanks for your time today. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how's the best way right these days? Besides 1-900-JEFF.
Yeah, they can get me at jbrown@alphasocialmediainc.com. That's my email. That's jbrown@alpha, ALPHA, socialmediainc.com. They can reach me there, and that's usually my fastest way of getting back to people because, as you know, I'm a trainer. I find myself in rooms locked in for about 3 to 4 hours where I can't really answer a phone call, but every now and then I can take a look at my email, and if it's a quick enough question, I can get back to them as fast as possible.
Thanks for your time, Jeff, and have a happy new year. And 2019 looks to be a good year for social media.
It's going to be exciting and full of opportunity despite all the drawbacks.
Thank you. Thank you for joining this week's SDM interview show. Please join us every Thursday for the weekly SDM interview show as posted on studyingdigitalmarketing.com. If you need any digital marketing needs, please contact us via our contact page at studyingdigitalmarketing.com or on Twitter, tweet at our CEO at Rob Cairns, or on Facebook, facebook.com/studyingdigitalmarketing. We'd be glad to help you sit down and help you with your digital marketing project. Have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.